Calm down. It'll be okay.
You're listening to Parenting in the Rain, Insights from the Experts podcast, episode 38.
Welcome to Parenting in the Rain, Insights from the Experts podcast, providing parents all around the world with valuable knowledge to help with the biggies of family life. Here's your host, a registered play therapist, education specialist, parent coach, and my mom, Jackie Flynn.
Hi there, Jackie Flynn here. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Parenting in the Rain podcast. I can't believe I'm at episode 38 already. I love doing this and I love just meeting you guys. I have really gotten in touch with so many different people through this podcast. It really makes me count my blessings. Well, at the time of this recording, it's mid-October. It's just gorgeous outside. It's nice and crisp. Everybody started with the pumpkin stuff. I love that. I love the pumpkin patch. I love the pumpkin coffee. I love all of the pumpkin stuff. So I haven't really drank that many pumpkin lattes this year, but I do love it. I like that little cream that you can add in your coffee too. I remember years ago after I got out of the military, I went to go visit a friend in Penn State. She was going to college there. She was in the military with me, basic training. So I went to visit her years ago. She went in the reserves and I went active duty. So it was about 4 years after we had been together. And I met her in right there in the little town outside of Penn State, and it was just so beautiful. We had like apple cider and we ate like the best food. And one night she actually, we went out to dinner and she actually got me to try escargot. I really wasn't a big fan, but it was kind of neat to try something fancy. I remember it had butter on it and garlic butter and all that stuff. But it was really neat. The trees there were just so brilliantly colorful. It was absolutely gorgeous. Well, today's episode is all about when a parent struggles with anxiety. We're also going to look at how to heal from anxiety and really explore the coping skills and how to calm down through really trying times. It can be really hard. So, as many of you guys know, my work is really greatly influenced by specific types of therapies that I perform at my private practice. So, I'm a big believer in EMDR. That's eye movement desensitization reprocessing. And that's something I've seen big shifts in people and lots of healing. And I've recently was trained in brain spotting, and also EFT is something that's amazing too, that emotional freedom technique. And as a play therapist, I've seen lots of healing through play therapy, sand tray therapy, art therapy, things like that. And through my work, I have read some really good books, but 2 books specifically really stand out among others. The Body Keeps the Score by Dr. Bessel Kolk and Peter Levine's Healing Trauma book. Those books really taught me a lot. I just started listening to Audible not too long ago, maybe a few months ago, and I got those books on Audible as well so I could listen to them over and over again. It truly is amazing how every time that I listen to it, I hear something new, and it's really helped me help other people, which is really cool. I think it's important to begin our discussion today with what anxiety is and what it is not. So mental health clinicians, we use a big book to clinically diagnose anxiety disorders. It's called the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders. It's a big old thick book, and right now we're on the 5th edition, so it changed when I was in grad school. Anxiety disorders, they come in so many different forms. In this episode, we're really going to look at the symptoms and the coping skills rather than the actual diagnosis. Because there are several diagnoses. There's that separation anxiety disorder. I see this most often with children and some teens. There's also selective mutism, specific phobias, social anxiety disorders, social phobias, panic disorder, agoraphobia. That's really like when people have that fear of places or situations. And then there's general anxiety disorder, and this is what I see most in my work. Substance medication-induced anxiety disorder is also something in the DSM, and anxiety disorder due to another medical condition, and there's some more too. But we're not really going to get into the actual diagnosis here. We're just going to talk about symptoms, because if you do need to go further with this, I really recommend that you seek out professional help, because you don't want to kind of label yourself or diagnose yourself without that professional assistance, because sometimes it can be a little off base or maybe misleading. Anxiety, like the range of emotions that we experience, is all part of our human experience. Just really knowing that we go through certain things as just human beings and giving ourselves permission to be human is healing in itself. It's important not to judge our emotions, good or bad. Rather, look at them through a different light. Look at them through the level of functionality that they have in your life. I listened to an episode of Marie TV with Marie Forleo. She has a YouTube channel, and they're really good little videos, especially for business folks out there. But she had one with Elizabeth Gilbert on there. She's the author of the Eat, Pray, Love. She's really good. I love hearing her speak. And on one of the episodes, she talked about the function of fear. And I thought it was so cleverly just really described in a way that it was like, oh yeah, she's right. I never thought of it that way before. Fear, it's ultimately the foundation of anxiety, right? It's the fear that something may happen. And when I talk to my clients and we have that discussion of what's going on for them, a lot of times those what ifs come out. What if this? What if that? The fear of not having control, not knowing what's going to happen can be really prevalent. So in this episode that I watched, Elizabeth had just really that great description of how it's like fear is riding with her in the car, and she puts it in the back seat. She doesn't allow fear to ride in the front seat, not allowing it to control anything, not the radio, to adjust the mirrors, or to grab the steering wheel and control the direction she's going. But she does recognize that fear does serve a purpose, because if we didn't have some type of fear, we would be in trouble, right? We want like a certain amount of fear to keep us safe. Ultimately, a certain amount of anxiety keeps us alive. It keeps us from getting in situations that can hurt us. But if you think back to kind of what I talked about a few minutes ago, it's not necessarily that it's there. It's the amount that it's there and the level of functionality in your life. We just recently had a Hurricane Matthew, and anxiety levels were up, and they still are up in our community. But that actually served a purpose, because that anxiety helped people do what they needed to do. But as things kind of get back to normal, hopefully it levels out for those people. And that's when you kind of look at, is this functional or not functional in my life? Well, Dr. Peter Levine and Bessel van der Kolk's books, like I had told you, they're just amazing. The Body Keeps Score and Healing Trauma. They really describe anxiety kind of like as a smoke alarm. They use that metaphor of a smoke alarm in your brain. It goes off when you're in danger. I know we used to live on a sailboat, and anytime I would cook anything on that boat, the smoke alarm would go off. I would barely get the butter heated up for the grilled cheese, smoke alarm went off. It was really, really sensitive, and it was really close to the cooking area, so it wasn't functioning right. And when we think about smoke alarms as compared to our brains, we kind of look at When is it functioning at the right level? When people have an unhealthy level of anxiety, perhaps one of like the anxiety disorders that I mentioned before, it's like when that smoke alarm goes off in super sensitive mode. Just like when I start that grilled cheese and it goes off, it really doesn't need to go off then, right? Because I'm not in any danger. I'm standing right there. There's not really any smoke. There's not any danger. Where our brains are so brilliantly wired for our life experience. Really, really complex. There's a lot of research going on. And there's a lot of research that's already been done that's taught us so much, but there's still so much more to learn. But there's a part of our brain called the amygdala, and that's like a little almond-shaped part of our brain that serves as that smoke alarm. And there's other parts of our brain that it works with as well, the hippocampus and the limbic system and all of that. But when big like traumatic things happen, it really kind of processes in a really fast way. They call it the low road, and it goes in little chunks. So that's what makes us more susceptible to anxiety when we have trauma in our life. So we're going to talk about that a little bit more as we go along as well. Lots and lots and lots of brain research has been done. I just was recently at an EMDR consultation in Orlando. I love going to that kind of stuff. But they were talking about all the brain research that's being done, the interaction between the right and the left hemisphere of the brain, the corpus callosum in the middle, and the hippocampus, all of those different pieces working together to really help us to have a good quality of life, which when you think about it, it really is just unbelievably amazing. And just probably about the last 10 years, I think, the neuroscience has just really just exploded with so much information. I love listening to Dr. Dan Siegel's work. He has so much good information, and there's more and more coming out each day. All of the coping skills that I'm going to suggest to you in this episode really just helps your brain function at a more optimal level at the time of distress. So please know, though, that these coping skills that we're going to go over, these calming ways to calm and get our brain kind of working at a more optimal level, turning down that smoke alarm in our brain, they're not like a light switch. We don't turn them on and off. Some definitely do work quicker for others than some of the other ones, but I like to think of them more like a dimmer. And sometimes you have to do some of these things several times to kind of build that mindful muscle. It's not an actual muscle, but through mindfulness, which is one of the calming and coping skills, through mindfulness we can build that resiliency and get that smoke alarm to where it is not as sensitive, as well as other types of therapies too. There's lots of different options that can really help with that. So sometimes if things don't seem to help and you've really you've tried and you feel like, gosh, this is not working, seeking out professional assistance from a mental health professional really could kind of help you get to the root of those fears or the anxiety at a deeper level. Again, that is something that is totally your choice. I definitely believe in the power of therapy. I see it every day, all the healing and the just being able to move past the tough stuff with my clients. It really is amazing. As a clinician, I've seen probably the most incredible shifts with my clients through EMDR, the eye movement desensitization reprocessing. That's a really good type of therapy. There's a book, if you want to learn more about that, called Getting Past Your Past by Francine Shapiro. She was the one that founded EMDR. Really good book. It has some heavy material in there, but it explains exactly how it really gives you lots of case studies too, but how that happens, not the logistics of, the mechanics of how it works and everything, because that is something that needs to be done by an EMDR therapist. But it really incorporates as much of the brain as it can in that healing process. So you can really, I get much farther with that than I do with talk therapy. Also EFT, I've seen some big shifts. Emotional freedom technique, that's really good. That's also known as tapping. There's a really good book called The Tapping Solution by Nick Ortner, I believe his name is. And that's one that I have on Audible as well. That one is good, and he has some actual experiential things in there that I love. And also, I love art therapy because art therapy and play therapy can really surpass that limitation of words. It uses the whole brain too, and it really gets in to help connect just those things that the unconscious and the conscious mind that don't connect with just words and talking. Also, I'm a big believer in somatic experiencing, and that is really influenced by Peter Levine's work. He's the guru on that, and that's really just noticing where these different feelings show up in your body. He like introduced something to me that I had heard briefly about through my EMDR trainings and readings, but he really goes into it in depth. Pendulating, really noticing where the pain is in your body. And a lot of times I notice that people hold it in maybe their chest, their throat. Sometimes they'll hold it in their shoulders if it's anxiety. And then you notice where it's not in your body. And a lot of times people say, I don't feel it at my feet. And then through the somatic experiencing, and if you get his book, I'll put it in the show notes at Trauma Healing. He actually will have some experiential stuff too. He teaches you how to pendulate, how to go from where the pain is in your body to where it isn't, to where it is and where it isn't. And that helps just kind of rock it out and help it move out for good. One thing that he said really stuck with me, that anxiety is like an uncharged energy. Like it needs to discharge, not uncharged. It's just, it's charged and it needs to be released. He really used a great little story about a polar bear in the wild that was being tagged for some research to help keep its environment safe or something like that. I don't remember all the details about that part, but it really was kind of like a trauma because it came out of that feeling of incapacitated, just being frozen, and it looked like it was just flailing around, but when they slowed down the cameras, it was actually playing out its release, so it was able to play out the story, being able to discharge that energy in a way that it didn't keep it stuck, because a polar bear with anxiety probably wouldn't be really safe, right? If the part of its brain that fight, flight, or freeze really took action. So as human beings, we can use that knowledge to allow our energy to discharge as well. These types of therapy that I mentioned, the EMDR, EFT, art therapy, play therapy, the somatic experiencing, they're really types of therapies that go past just that traditional talking it out. They do surpass the limitation of words, and a lot of times the words are limited so that you can do less thinking and more feeling, and that's what helps in that healing process. And it can happen so very quickly sometimes. Sometimes, especially in the beginning, I was questioning, is this person really doing better, or am I imagining it, or are they wishing that it is true, like hopeful thinking so much to where they're just kind of saying that it feels better. But it's not. The person really does move past and escape from the grips of anxiety and depression and PTSD, whatever it is that they're dealing with. So those therapeutic efforts are well worth it, well worth your time, your resources. After years of working in this field, I've seen long-lasting change, which is pretty profound. I'm certain that these types of therapy help people get the quality of their life back because I've seen it. And I've actually, through training, we experienced EMDR ourselves, and it's incredible. It's really neat how it works. So I do urge you that if you are looking for a clinician, maybe seek out someone that does those types of therapies and see if it can help you. If not, I think the biggest biggest factor in whether therapy experience makes a difference is that therapeutic relationship. If you and your therapist are really have that strong relationship. But through EMDR, it's really cool that a lot of times people don't even need to be able to say what's bothering them, because a lot of times you may not. You may just notice that, hey, when I go in this situation, I feel nauseous or I feel really, really nervous. You may not have actual words or reasons. So that type of therapy, you don't need the words or reasons. It really helps you just kind of process through that bilateral stimulation of the brain is what it's called. And usually the therapist will, move their fingers back and forth, or they could do the eye movement, the auditory, or the tactile. And that is something that isn't to be tried at home. It's definitely something that is done in a therapeutic setting with a qualified clinician. So not something to try on your own at home, but it's definitely worth seeking out a therapist if you need that kind of support. For parents, now, as you know, this episode is about parenting with anxiety. And I work with a lot of parents in my work, and I'm a parent myself, so I know how tough it can get. It can get tough even when you don't have anxiety symptoms. So for parents, it really just allows them to be fully engaged with their children and their spouse if they're married, when they can really heal and move on from anxiety. It can be truly remarkable. I think everybody really could use therapy at one time in their life or another. I know I used to listen to Dr. Laura Berman when I was coming home from grad school. On my drive home, she used to have a radio show would come on during that drive. And she said something that really stuck with me one time is everybody could use a year of therapy in their life. That's what she recommended. And I do believe that to be true. I know it can be really helpful to really process through the things that life gives us, especially if you have a difficult situation in your past or your present or your perceived future. So in this episode, we're really going to cover what anxiety means, but we're not going to confine ourselves to the diagnostic piece, as I said, because anxiety can be felt at a level of meeting that clinical diagnostic criteria, of course, but also it can be felt on a level that doesn't. So we're not going to focus on that piece. That's something that if you do want to look at more of, am I at that level where I feel like I have an anxiety disorder, you definitely want to seek out some professional support, because this podcast episode is not therapy, nor is it a substitute for therapy. It's meant for educational and informational purposes only. So if you do need that therapeutic support, look around in your area for a mental health provider that can really meet your needs. All right, and if you haven't done so yet, be sure to check out episode 33. It's called When a Parent Struggles with Depression, because a lot of times depression and anxiety will go together. Sometimes they can be comorbid. So for parents, it's especially important to heal and move on from anxiety. Children really need a parent or a caregiver that can fully participate in their life experience with them to create those healthy foundations of attachment and security, and anxiety can really impede on that process. Even in utero, a mother's emotional state can have a big impact on child development. In my EMDR training a long time ago, many years ago, I learned that we have emotional memories as far as maybe 6 months in the womb. Can you believe that? I remember when I heard that, my eyes got real big. I was like, what? 6 months in utero, you can have emotional memories. And also, our children really not only use this as a model of how to act, which they certainly do, but they take on our responses to situations in a deeper way, in an unconscious way. So if we're feeling all wound up and experiencing those issues of anxiety, it can be kind of like that feeling of contagious, because you kind of set the temperature. In my child-parent relationship therapy, one of the rules of thumb in that therapy is be the thermostat, not the thermometer, because you kind of regulate what the temperature is like in your situation. So if you're the thermometer, and as things get heated up, as things get stressful, you get heated up and stressful too, then your kid is as well. So it's good to heal from anxiety and move past it, especially if you're a parent. Some of these types of therapies that I bring up do help people heal from it, but I know that old adage of an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure definitely applies here. So you want to help set those early foundations of the kind of normalcy of that healthy smoke alarm without having to have your kid repeat that same pattern as they grow. And if you're a parent that's experiencing those painful and limiting levels of anxiety, getting yourself help can not only benefit you and your children, but your children's children and their children, and so on and so on. There's no trophy for self-sacrificing or taking on the hard road through this. There's only a chance of having it affect people for generations to come. So that's one of those things that when you help yourself, you're really helping others too. Kind of like that, this is another part of that child-parent relationship therapy that I love so much. I'll put a link to the workbook in the show notes if you want to order maybe some more information on that. That's from some gurus in play therapy. I know Gary Landreth is one of the authors there. But one of the rules of thumb there is put on your own oxygen mask before you put on others. So you can't really truly help your own child if you're suffering yourself. You got to be able to be fully present. So remember that if you have anxiety and you're struggling and things are really tough, really kind of look at, do I need to put on my own oxygen mask, and then I can be there to help my children? Because if you're not well enough, then you're not going to be able to take care of them as well. Okay, so I know how tempting it is to search on the web for symptoms and do like a self-diagnosis. I've done it myself with medical stuff. I remember, maybe a year ago, I was convinced that I had, it's a little embarrassing, hypothyroidism. But once I got to the doctor, I just knew I did. I was thinking, okay, I figured it out. And I'm not a medical doctor. And I got to the doctor, I had the blood work done, and it turned out that I just had low iron levels and low vitamin D and CoQ10, I think it is called. But once I did exactly what the doctor told me, I started feeling that energy again. I started feeling all of my symptoms subside. So my self-diagnosis in the medical realm was not accurate, as many times when people get on Google, you can meet some of the criteria and then you think, oh, that's what I have. So resist that temptation to do that. As a clinician, I have definitely experienced people coming in convinced that they have some kind of specific disorder as well. Sometimes they are on the right track, but sometimes they're not. And a diagnosis can be so very meaningful to people that you don't even want to get into that. That's why we're going to cover this today, so you can get some awareness and some coping skills of just the symptoms itself. But even if you notice that, hey, I'm experiencing a lot of things that are being talked about here, it doesn't mean that you have an anxiety disorder. It means that you are experiencing those symptoms. But you can pursue help from a mental health professional to really kind of delve deeper if you need to. So I'm not going to read the DSM diagnosis verbatim. We're going to discuss it like in a practical sense. Like if you're experiencing this on a deep level, though, like I said, seek other information out by seeking a mental health professional. I have seen anxiety treated so well with therapy. A lot of my clients, because that's one of my specialties, is anxiety counseling, the healing from anxiety, because I'm a therapist that specializes in trauma. Trauma is definitely one of the things that can lead to anxiety. So a lot of times the therapy is a huge support, and sometimes people do take medication as an adjunct. I definitely don't recommend the medication like as the only source of healing. But again, I'm not a medical doctor, so you need to do whatever your mental health and your medical professional recommend to you. I'm just here to talk about the therapeutic piece of it. Your physician can be a great source of information. I also, as part of my work, a lot of times, you can hear Max barking in the other room. Sorry about that. A lot of times I will go with my clients to doctor's appointments. I've been to psychiatrist appointments and medical doctor's appointments when it feels really helpful. And it's really made a difference in a lot of situations. I know it does take time, and I don't really charge them for that because it's in addition, but I can see it can be a real support to have that team approach. Especially with situations like eating disorders where you have like a nutritionalist and you have a therapist and a medical professional, all those people working together, really kind of sending the same message to the client and working together on the best therapeutic approach can make a big difference. The anxiety, it can be overwhelming. It can leave us feeling out of control. Some things that people with anxiety experience are some of the following. A lot of times they say they're exhausted or feeling high-strung, even like more than usual. They have a hard time focusing and concentrating on issues. They get grumpy and irritable and maybe even like angry in certain situations. It can even hold itself in your body, as we talked about before, and it can leave you feeling sore, really wanting to get that kind of get away from situations. So it really a lot of times goes with depression. So it has that same feeling of, I don't want to do this. I can't do this. I just don't have the energy to put towards this feeling. And it can also really have a big element of sleep disturbance, because one could have trouble falling asleep or staying asleep or just feeling restless. Or when they wake up, they feel like, gosh, I'm still tired. I slept all night and I just don't feel like I slept at all. It definitely has some body symptoms too. I love Dr. Bessel Kolk's work and Peter Levine's work. They point out how the body experiences those deep emotional issues and it really holds itself in the body. As an EMDR therapist, one of the things we look at is, where is it in your body? And like I said, a lot of times it's right there in the chest and the throat area, shoulders. People get sore necks and they just feel tense. Sometimes I've seen even people that grit their teeth and have that tension. I've seen anxiety also, and this is really interesting, show itself as like gastrointestinal issues such as constipation or diarrhea, sweating, nausea, feeling faint, and things like that. Things that you might think, gosh, could that be anxiety? And it definitely could. Each person is so unique and they really have their own experience, but the big takeaway is that it's not just confined to the thoughts in your mind. It can really be hard to function with anxiety, especially if you're a parent with tons of responsibilities and expectations. It can really take a toll on your relationships. Relationships, whether the home relationships with your kids, with your spouse, with your significant other, your work relationships, whether it's with like your peers or your boss or any people that you serve, like customers or clients, and your social life. It can have a big impact because a lot of times people will avoid situations depending on what their anxiety is related to, so they really miss out on big chunks of life. But through this episode, since it is specifically explaining to you as parents, I really do want to highlight that it can really strain the child-parent relationship and marital relationships for sure. And both of those are important. I'm going to do an episode on like the dangers of a child-centered like marriage. A lot of times people, when they get married and they have just such a wonderful relationship. And then they have kids, they think, well, we're going to put all of our energy into our kids. And then they kind of neglect their marital relationship. And then that goes sour. It just kind of erodes away at times. And then ultimately the kid doesn't get what they really, truly need, which is a happy family. We just had a meeting. I just had a meeting with a couple of my therapist friends, and one lady there told me the most beautiful thing. She said that in her marriage, she helps people that are getting ready to marry through her church, and she was saying that she really kind of viewed their marriage, her marriage with her husband, as their first child. And when it needed, nurtured, they would nurture it. When it was feeling sleepy, they would give it rest. When it needed its diaper changed, of course, these are all metaphors, they would change its diaper, feed it, really nurture it. And that not only helped keep their home happy and healthy, but also their children grew up to be happy and healthy too, which is ultimately, that's amazing. That's what we want for our kids. So be sure not to neglect your marital relationship, and anxiety can really put a whammy on that too, especially if the other partner hasn't ever experienced anxiety or knows anybody that experiences anxiety. So this episode wouldn't be complete without a mention of trauma. Trauma can come to us in so many different ways, but really we look at it in two different ways here. The big T trauma for those really startling situations, and the little t trauma, like the lowercase t, for the smaller situations, but they still impact us. A big T may be from a big emotional upset or physical or emotional abuse, violence, wartime experience, those really intense situations. And those little t, the lowercase t, may be, definitely something smaller, like someone laughing at you during a class presentation in 4th grade, gossiping and stuff like that. Well, a little t could be the same as a big T for other people. So people, they really experience things in a different way. So a big T for one person may be a little t for someone else, and vice versa. These traumas cause our smoke alarm to go off in our brain, like we talked about before, sending a signal to release cortisol in our brain to keep us safe. So it's really kind of functioning to keep us safe, which is a good thing. But if we let that alarm system go off in such a big way, it really kind of gets in super sensitive mode, and it releases those chemicals in future situations without as much as a threat when they are triggered. So that's how that happens. Your brain it experiences a big situation, whether you remember it with your cognitive mind or if it's something that happened, before your memories or something that maybe you kind of blocked out, that can still really affect us because it sends a message to your brain, hey, this type of situation isn't safe, so really be on alert. It can be difficult to parent with anxiety. It can leave us on edge, not being able to really, truly, fully engage in the present moment with our children, or keeping us from participating in social situations. It can make us want to just stay home and take care of something else instead of really being able to tackle what we're doing. I know years ago, I knew someone that they, had the symptoms of obsessive compulsive disorder, and they had to have everything just right before they left the house. And with kids, it's hard to get everything just right, so they never really did. So they missed out on so many different situations that they could have experienced with their kids. And that was long before I became a therapist. It's like an old childhood memory from another family, but it is something that can really impact your ability to really not only be a parent, but really just truly live in the moment. It can cause people to kind of just go into a panic as well. If you've heard of panic disorder or maybe panic attacks, a lot of times the panic attacks will be impacted by the thought of having a panic attack, the fear of having a panic attack can bring on a panic attack. Years ago, I used to teach middle school, and I absolutely loved it. At the beginning of class, I would read a little chapter from Don't Sweat the Small Stuff for Teens by Richard Carlson. I don't know if you've ever read those series of books or seen them, but they are fantastic, and they have just little chunks of information that each little chapter can make a big difference. But I really like starting the class off that way, and I got a lot of feedback from the students. It was years ago. I just recently saw a girl working in one of the stores around here, and she was remarking that she had her journal still, and she also remembered many of those things that we talked about in the class, which literally brought tears to my eyes. It was just so amazing that she remembered that long ago from school. And that was a time where I was hoping I was doing my best, but I was hoping it was making a difference. So it felt really good to kind of get that feedback from years later. I used to have them do a gratitude journal when they come into the class, writing, I am grateful for, and then they would pick 3 things. And that really kind of set that tone for gratitude, what's going right in my life. So I think, and a lot of people said they kept their journals, I think that was something that really could make a big shift in someone's life. I really, in that book, Don't Sweat the Small Stuff, I really, really liked the metaphor that the author Richard Carlson used. He talked about the metaphor of a snow globe. And I have a snow globe in my office as well. If you go to my Facebook page, Parenting in the Rain podcast, it's the page, not the actual group, but I would like you maybe go to both. But I have a little video of me talking about this metaphor as well. I have this little glass egg with these little gold flakes. It works a little bit better than a snow globe in that respect, but it really kind of illustrates how when a person's mind is so full of thoughts and emotions that they can't really think clearly. They really can't function on their full capacity. Dr. Dan Siegel explains this through the handy model of the brain, which I'll have a link to in the show notes as well. When that frontal cortex is offline, people say and they do things that they don't mean. And I definitely see some parallels between that concept of when your frontal cortex is offline. Dr. Dan Siegel talks about it as when they flip their lid. And through my Gottman method, couples therapy, we talk about it as flooding. It's really the same thing. It's once you are at such a great level of distress, it's best to just engage in calming skills, just as if you would have shaken up a snow globe and you just kind of let it set down, let it rest. And when it's clear, that's when you can make those decisions. That's when you can communicate in a healthy way. I love that metaphor of the snow globe. I must have talked about it a gazillion times since I read it. The calming and the coping skills that we'll cover in just a couple minutes, they really help those snowflakes set on the globe. Another important point that I need to mention is the importance of naming the emotions that come up in certain situations. Dr. Siegel has a phrase, if you can name it, you can tame it. By naming our emotions, it allows our brain to process them in just a more efficient way. Through therapy, we really get into what emotions are coming up, and that helps it kind of reprocess in your brain in a way that lets it kind of be sorted out and allows it to not have so much control over you. So before we cover the calming and the coping skills, it is important to mention the impact of nutrition and sleep, though. Those are 2 biggies. With good nutrition and sleep, our brains function at its best. Now, when things are emotionally overwhelming or there's some type of emotional or physical abuse present or in the past, sleep disturbance can be a biggie. It can really impede somebody's ability to fall asleep or stay asleep because your brain tries to process through that stuff at nighttime. And if it feels so overwhelming, your brain just kind of wakes you up because it feels like, hey, everything's not safe. That smoke alarm, the amygdala says, hey, you need to wake up. You need to be fully present for this. So that's when you notice sleep disturbance and you notice some of these biggies come up, that's when is the time to really kind of seek out that mental health support. It can make a big, big difference. So let's really cover a list of things that help that anxiety to subside. I always like to start off with a rating scale to really kind of see where it's at and that level of anxiety. In EMDR and EFT, we call this rating scale a SUD, Subjective Unit of Distress. From 0 to 10, how distressed do you feel? These are described more in detail, like when you can go to the show notes, but they're just definitely described more in detail here. But you can also get a SUD that you can print out, that rating scale. I have a 1 to 10. It's not 0 to 10, but a 1 to 10 that you can print out, put on your fridge, and it can just be a reminder to kind of rate yourself to see where you're at in your level of upset. And I want you to know that anything over, I say like a 5, if you feel that 10 is the worst and 1 is nothing at all, if you feel a level of distress of 5 about something, that's time when you just need to stop what you're doing and engage in some of these calming skills. Even a 4, I would say, because that's something that really can, it'd be like that snow globe is all shaken up. But you can definitely do these as prevention as well. So the first thing is your breath. So the 4 seconds inhale, hold for 2, and 4 seconds exhale can be so very grounding. It can really help get that frontal cortex, that higher level thinking part of your brain that can go offline when you get upset. It can help it calm down. So let's do that now. Let's do a big deep inhale. 4, 3, 2, and 1. Then hold for 2. And then exhale. 4, 3, 2, and 1. That 4 seconds, hold for 2 seconds, and 4 seconds, that can really make a difference. 4 seconds inhale, hold for 2, 4 seconds exhale. Do that 3 times, and that can help. And I want you to really monitor your self-talk. If you find yourself ruminating on something that you feel anxious about, like, what if this happens, or what if that happened, or I can't believe he did that, and you feel your emotions just really kind of looping or getting stuck on one thought, I want you to take the deep breath and visualize, have a go-to visualization of a place where you feel calm. That can really kind of take you off into a different direction. Now with self-talk, our mind doesn't really hear the word not. So let me give you an example. Say that there's like something that I'm going to do something totally different so it doesn't trigger you in this realm. But suppose that it's with ice cream and I'm trying to eat healthier. So I think to myself, I am not going to eat ice cream. I'm not going to eat ice cream. I'm not going to eat ice cream. Well, what does your body think of? It thinks of ice cream. Every time I say ice cream, you may even think more and more of ice cream. I really learned about this in my training through hypnotherapy, too. You want to really focus on what you do want. So not saying it in a negative way, but rephrasing it in a way that doesn't even allow your brain to think of it. For example, what if I told you not to think of a purple elephant in polka-dotted black boxer shorts? Don't think of that purple elephant in polka-dotted boxer shorts that's angry. What did you think of? That's what you thought of. So you want to really get away from that and move towards what you really want, which is I'm going to be calm and relaxed in this situation. And then go to your visualization activity, whether it's like at the beach or a mountain situation, something that you pick that you know that you feel calm and safe and relaxed there. Also, there's an intervention or a technique, I guess is a better way of saying it, bunny sniffs. And I learned about this in a recent EMDR training, maybe like 4 months ago. But it's really, you know how like a bunny goes around the yard and it's like just little sniffs like that. That's how you do it. But I was showing it to a little girl and her parents one time, and the little girl said, "That's how I look when I cry." And I thought, oh my goodness, that's how I look when I cry too. So it's taking those real quick little short inhales and then doing a big exhale. So let's do that together. And remember, don't do this while you're driving. Do this in a nice, calm place where you can focus. So take just 5 quick inhales. You don't want to do more than 3 of this either. You want to just kind of limit to 3, or else it can kind of make you feel a little lightheaded. So take a big bunny sniff in and exhale. And as you exhale, just let your whole body relax. Another one, let's do another big bunny sniff in and exhale. Now when you do that, you can look really, really goofy, just as a heads up, but it's totally worth goofy. I totally don't care anymore when people see me, because that one can really, it's like a physiological override. It can really help you kind of calm down in a quick way. Also, water is really amazing. When you drink water, it can jumpstart your digestive system. And a lot of times when we feel that anxiety or that fear, the smoke alarm in our brain really kind of sends that message, hey, everything isn't safe. So all of the stuff in the body that doesn't need to be working right now, I want you to kind of go offline. So the digestive system is one of those things. So when you drink water, or if you don't have water, you pull saliva in your mouth or you chew gum, you really jumpstart that digestive system process, and it can give you that physiological override to feel that safety, that calmness in a way that allows your smoke alarm to be like, hey, this isn't a threatening situation. You can calm down. So I love that one. That one and the bunny sniffs are my favorite. And the breathing. I guess all of these are. That's why I put them here. Okay, so something I do in the sand tray, the circle breathing. I really kind of use the circle, going one way, tracing the circle with my finger for the inhale. And then when you get to your starting point, go the opposite direction for the exhale. So circles, I love mandalas. I love circles. They can be so very healing. Circles are in labyrinths as well. That circle combined with the deep belly breaths can really help. Also, progressive muscular relaxation is really good. That's a bit long to put in this podcast episode, but basically it's where you go through each body part in a sequential way and relax it. It can really help bedtime as well. There's a really good children's book called The Angry Octopus by Lori Light that introduces this, but there's also tons and tons of YouTube videos that really go over this as well. So it's called Progressive Muscular Relaxation. Also, another one is thought stopping and changing. So when you feel that rumination, all of this, like the same thought going over and over, and you feel yourself getting angrier and angrier, or more and more worried, or whatever emotion it is, sadder and sadder, you can imagine a stop sign and really just change your thought. That's part of a cognitive behavioral therapy approach, and I've seen that really work. That definitely works best when you have more of your frontal cortex online, when you can really think, but that one can be effective as well. Also, the EFT, the tapping, can really help, especially in the moment. And that's where you tap on the different meridian points that are really specified through that type of therapy. And again, you can find that in The Tapping Solution by Nick Ortmer. That's a really good book. But you tap through with a certain kind of statement, and it can help you kind of relax to where you notice a difference in that level of distress on your SUD scale in a quicker way. Also, writing can really help, because writing really allows that catharsis to happen, that release, that being able to just kind of let it all out. But when we write, something unique happens. It uses our left brain and our right brain, which allows us to process the information in a better way. So that writing or artwork, and I always love having my clients, when they're feeling distressed, do their artwork with their non-dominant hand, and that can allow them to really work through the issue in a way with part of the brain that usually isn't in the problem-solving part of it, so that writing and the artwork can make a big difference. But if you use your non-dominant hand, which is the hand that you usually don't write with, that can really help you. Okay, so if you've listened to any other podcast episodes, you probably already know that I love labyrinths, and I definitely have a link to the labyrinths in the show notes. I'm an affiliate because I love them so much. I have a double labyrinth that I use in my office, that I use with couples, I use with sibling relationships, I use with individuals. I really notice a difference in terms of grounding, in terms of just helping people process through the tough stuff. Something that can mimic it, though, if you do not have a labyrinth, you can easily mimic it through like a double doodle, like mirroring with the right hand and the left hand, just drawing at the same time, doing the exact opposite with each hand. That can engage both sides of the brain, especially if you are processing some tough material. And also, I think I described it a little bit more earlier, the pendulating that Dr. Peter Levine introduced. And looking at that body scan, where do you feel this in your body? From the top of your head to the bottom of your feet, where is that anxiety showing up in your body? And then through that book, he has some experiences where he teaches you to kind of move towards it, not judging it good or bad, just allowing it to discharge through you. Now, a big disclaimer through this is it could be really activated, so you really kind of got to keep yourself in the window of tolerance if you find yourself getting dysregulated, like it feels like a bit too much because your memories are so overwhelming. Just kind of use those calming techniques to kind of pull yourself back and ground yourself. The breathing and the water and the, you can do that progressive muscular relaxation. And then that's when it would be a good time to seek out some support from a mental health professional that can help you really kind of address those situations in a space that is really set up for you monitoring them. You're doing it in a way that is supported. And the last one I want to mention is walking or jogging. Now, when we walk or we jog, it's stimulating both sides of the body, so it has that bilateral stimulation where you're really activating the right side of the body, then the left side, the right side, and the left side as you're processing through this tough stuff. But also, it has that extra added effect that you have that blood flow going to your brain and your body's feeling healthier. So that is really good. Having that normal exercise, swimming also with the sensory effect of water can be really healing. If you're experiencing the feelings of anxiety and it's limiting your life as well as your ability to parent or to really just function in that family role in a healthy way, be sure that you consider seeking out a professional mental health counselor. It can really help you get your life back and help those relationships kind of repair themselves so that you can have a good life and your family can have a good life. I've seen huge changes in my clients that led them to better quality of their lives and their entire family as well. So it's definitely worth your resources and your efforts. In the show notes, I put a list of books and products that I absolutely love and I recommend. Many of them I'm affiliates to. So know, though, that I would never recommend anything to you that I haven't either read myself or used myself. So all of these books that I'm recommending, all of these products, I have definitely used and I believe in them wholeheartedly. Well, thank you so much for listening to this episode. And if you would like to find the show notes to this episode, you can find those at www.parentingintherain.com. And for those of you that sent me emails, I just want to say thank you. I love getting your emails. Also, there's a parenting summit that's happening at the time of this recording that I'm featured on. I don't have the exact date at the time of this recording, but I'm going to put the link to it. There's lots of great experts on that summit. It's ran by Mercedes Sudamano. I think I'm saying her name right. She's excellent. She's from the Parenting Skill out in California. And there's some great parenting experts on there. I've listened to them each day, and I'm excited to be one of the ones featured. So, and it's totally free for you to listen to it. So you can just go sign up, and you can get those free interviews. They're about 30 minutes a piece. They come through the email. I listen to mine while I'm cleaning up my play therapy room, usually after the kids leave in between sessions during the days. All right, if you're not a member of our Facebook group, Parenting in the Rain Community, we would love to have you in there. Also, go ahead and like the page too, Parenting in the Rain podcast, hosted by Jackie Flynn. You'll see my picture there, and I put some information out there as well. All right, and if you're on iTunes, be sure to subscribe, rate, and review. I absolutely check every review, everything that everybody's written, and I just love it. I love that I get to connect with you guys in this way. Also, I have a free download for you that you can find in the show notes at parentingintherain.com or JackieFlynnConsulting.com/anxiety help, and it's on episode 38. It's called a distress scale, and you can really gauge how much calming was done before and after your calming technique. It really can, it's subjective, but it can really help you notice what works and what doesn't, and how much things changed. All right, thank you so much for listening, and until next time, take care.